have a president who does not enjoy this same goodwill and is dictatorial, he will say there was a precedent, and what did you people do? Yeah. The same way we complain about the attitude of the presidency towards Justice Ayo Salami at that time, it's the same way we are complaining now that there are better ways of doing this.
The better ways, mention one too.
Fantastic. I just told you, if you have, now why is the DSS collaborating with the NJC all of a sudden? Why didn't they collaborate with them before? I would love to see, wake up and pick up my newspapers and hear NJC fires 50 judges and hands them over for prosecution. And so, when that happens, now nobody will say, oh, it is the DSS that did it, or the arm recognized to deal with that issues, had dealt with it, recommends to the president to approve, and then the arm responsible for prosecution will immediately swing in. But when you put the cart before the horse, what you're going to have is this backlash that you're having back and forth. Accusations and counter-accusations.
Yeah, I was going to say something, because we are only looking at one aspect of corruption, which is the actual alleged petitioner bribing, judges. There is the other aspect of corruption, which is also influencing, the decisions of court, the outcome of cases, and this is done in different ways. One, particularly the executive, is more guilty of this, because if we're going to have an independent thought here, the judiciary, we need to begin to look at executive interference. One of the issues is already highlighted by liberals. What is the role of DSS, in NJC's disciplinary action against judges? Why must we force a fait accompli, on NJC, instead of NJC taking decisions? The moment you arrest judges in certain ways, like it was done recently, it is inevitable that those judges will no longer be able to sit to hear cases. It does not matter whether there are prima facie cases against them or not. If you look at what the DSS did, it was inevitable. It's like they've already been found guilty, so they've got to leave the place before trial. The same situation is happened in the case of, you mentioned the issue of code of conduct. In the issue of the chairman of the CCT tribunal, Danladi Umaru. Danladi Umaru, a petitioner, Rashid Taiwo, alleged that, look, I met with Danladi Umaru. The chairman of the CCT agreed that they met, which is against the law. It's not proper. And at the end of the day, there was an allegation that 10 million naira was negotiated, 1.8 million naira paid with check to the PA of the chairman of the CCT. But because it was convenient politically, in line with the agenda, of the country at that point in time, nobody asked Danladi Umar to step down. We have to be consistent in whatever we do. If we say Danladi Umar should not step down, even though he admitted meeting the petitioner, in his own interview with EFCC just last week in the court, the EFCC said the statement made by the PA was done voluntarily. But because it was convenient, we are trying Saraki. By no means Saraki should be tried, if he's found guilty of any infraction. But the fact of the matter is this: we need to worry about public perception, whether what we are doing, we are being consistent with it, or on one part, we are dealing with corruption involving judges and petitioners, but we are not willing to look at the aspect involving the executive and the judiciary, because it's meddling. We've had some of the judges raising so many allegations about executive interference. Not one person in the executive has been told to step down pending investigation. We have had cases of EFCC, like in the case of Danladi Umar. It was EFCC that cleared him. The EFCC is not the judiciary. It is the judiciary that it should be processed through the criminal justice. So it's another example of executive interference in judiciary. If we're going to have to deal with corruption, like Libra said, in an holistic way, we need to look at all the forms of corruption. We need to ensure that there is no interference, with judiciary, either by petitioner or by government in any form. Otherwise, we won't have an independent judiciary.
Is that possible?
Yes, it is very, very possible. Very, very possible. If you remember, also, I like giving examples.
Just hold on. You say it is possible.
Yes.
Now, my mind went to election tribunals.
Yes.
So, in light of those kinds of cases,
exactly. So
how is that possible?
There is, at a point, late Justice Kayode Esho, of blessed memory, former Justice of the Supreme Court, raised an alarm that the way we were going was gradually creating billionaire judges who, even when you tell them go, they would gladly go with, you know. Remember Justice Naro and Otuba Kalajai in Osun. I was at the tribunal, election petition tribunal in Cross River, and there were allegations. It got to a point, some lawyers will openly accuse judges of having been compromised. You see, there are even rumors of judges lobbying to handle election petition matters. If you read Segun Adeniyi's book, Power, Politics and Debt, he said that during the June 12th crisis, when the Justice Ikpeme gave that infamous ruling, that governors were calling the attorney generals to go to their states and obtain a counter order from the chief judge of the states. Also, if you remember, if you read El-Rufai's book, The Accidental Public Servant, he said when he came on board as minister, he knew that they were going to clean the system of allocating land, and that when they do that, people were going to go to court. So he summoned the judges at the FCT and discussed with them that they should not grant preliminary applications. They should not grant preliminary orders against, the government. So that means there had been interaction. And with the recent one, a judge saying, look, a minister came to my house and asked me. We have agreed. We said, look, yes, the judge, for that alone, even you going to the minister's house, that alone you have, taking steps to compromise your position. You need to step aside for proper investigation. What happened? What are we doing about the minister? They're still there. And so if we talk about this, and we will never have a better society built on systemic institutions if we continue with this approach. That's why you can say, if I say judiciary is my problem. In 1999, if you remember, in this same Lagos state, to get a judgment in Lagos High Court pre-1999 was a problem. It was rumored that the justice system in Lagos State was cash and carry. But when Tinubu and Oshibanjo came, they knew that there were problems of wages, there were problems of judges not properly remunerated. And so they sat down and looked at all of those problems and solved them before they used the sledgehammer. And I can tell you that in a day, about 30 magistrates were fired in Lagos State. Some judges also were fired in Lagos State. It didn't raise eyebrow because processes and procedures were followed. And the others that were spared the sledgehammer had to sit up because there was no longer an excuse why you should compromise, why you would say you are broke.
So are you saying some of these judges that are alleged to have done, been involved in acts of corruption, they weren't getting their fair share of their wages, or not really taken care of?
No.
Okay,
no,
so
even if there are some people that no matter what you pay them, they will still compromise. And so that's why it is not just about wages. Also, you need to look at appointment. I had also sat down on this same seat to ask the question, have we ever sat down to look at how our judges are appointed? The bearer is from me, please, he will cope. And it gets there, provided you are 10 years post-call. And so there were times in this same Lagos where there were accusations from MBA that people were appointed from banks. Imagine appointing a medical doctor that had not been practicing as a chief medical officer in a general hospital.
Okay.
You know, so when you appoint judges in that manner, you have all sort. So you now need to ensure that your structure, your system of checkmating them, it's intact, it's up and doing, and not an ad hoc one that we have now.
Libo, just hold that thought, please. We'll just take a short break, come back, and continue this very interesting conversation.